Hello everybody and welcome to another video. It's been a little while since I've done one of these hobby and history videos for the Wars of the Roses, but I thought it was about time, and I've just completed another follower of Warwick. At some point I do actually just need to get around to making Warwick himself, but to be honest, I'm having so much fun making all of his little minions and agents that I'm kind of forgetting about the man himself, but I will get him done. Anyway, I normally have a bit more of a preamble before I go into the history, but this guy's got a really interesting history, so I figure I'm just going to shut up and we'll just get started on the history straight away, and then we'll have a look at the model himself. Sir John Conyers was born around the year 1416 and was one of 25 children born to Christopher Conyers, who was a preeminent member of the Yorkshire gentry in northern England. His father was never knighted, but was appointed bailiff in the honour of Richmond in 1436. John Conyers was married to Marjorie Darcy on the 20th of November 1435 in Ravensworth, Towton and Ware. They were parents of at least 7 sons and 6 daughters. Conyers was based in Hornby Castle and was retained by Richard Neville, the Earl of Salisbury, whom his father also served along with his brother William and Richard. Since the First Battle of St Albans in 1455, an uneasy peace of sorts had existed between the factions vying for control of the crown. While attempts had been made for reconciliation between the parties, they had only met with mild success. By 1459, both sides were actively recruiting armies, and the Yorkist force that was stationed at Midland needed to join the main force at Ludlow. As one of Salisbury's key retainers, John Conyers would accompany the Earl on this journey in September 1459. As Salisbury's army, which included John Conyers, marched southwest, a Lancastrian army led by Lord Audley was on its way to intercept them. Audley chose the barren heathland of Blore Heath to set up an ambush for the Yorkist forces. On the morning of the 23rd of September, the Lancastrian forces, some 10,000 strong, took up position behind a great hedge, positioned on the southern side of the road and a stream, the Wimbledon Brook. Strangely, for the period, Lord Audley kept a lot of his men on horses, clearly wanting to conduct the engagement as a mounted affair, taking advantage of his numbers. The Yorkist scouts who had spied the Lancastrians informed Salisbury, who formed his men into 3 divisions as well as using their wagons to form a defensive laager. The battle began in the early afternoon, with a heavy storm of arrows by each side. The Yorkists then caused the Lancastrians to launch a mounted attack by means of a feint retreat. Lord Audley led his mounted men in the attack. The Yorkists loosed arrows into the Lancastrian cavalry as they rode at them, and the Lancastrian attack was repelled with significant casualties. Lord Audley rallied his cavalry and launched a second charge. This time the Lancastrian attack was decisively repelled with a loss of around 100 men, including Lord Audley, who was killed. In the middle of all this was Sir John Conyers. By the time of this battle he was around 43 years old and was well experienced. Even so, the vastly outnumbered Yorkist forces must have felt that their defence was all in vain. There are records of soldiers kissing the ground they stood on, so convinced were they that this would be where they met their end. At this point, a body of some 500 of the Lancastrian knights and men-at-arms who had remained mounted changed sides and attacked the rear of the advancing Lancastrians. The Lancastrian army dissolved in flight, and the Yorkists advanced to occupy their abandoned positions. The dismounted Lancastrian knights and men-at-arms suffered considerable difficulty in trying to escape the field, many being captured. Following the victory at Blore Heath, the 2 parts of the Yorkist army joined and attempted to move on London. However, they found their path blocked by the Lancastrian army with King Henry himself at its head. The Yorkists retreated towards Ludlow before making a stand at the fortified position near Ludford Bridge. The Yorkist morale was low, not least because the royal standard could be seen flying in the Lancastrian army, and the men knew that they actually stood against their king. Among the troops brought by Warwick there were 600 men led by Andrew Trollope, an experienced soldier. During the night, Trollope and his men and other men from the Yorkist force defected to the Lancastrian side. Faced with certain defeat, the Yorkists declared that they were returning to Ludlow. Then they abandoned their armies and fled to Wales. Conyers remained with Warwick, who fled to Calais. On the 20th of November 1459, Henry VI held a parliament at Coventry, where an Act of Attainder was passed against the Yorkist leaders and those who supported them. This became known as the Parliament of Devils, and all those who were named in the Act were all condemned as traitors and condemned to death for bearing arms against the king. Sir John Conyers was named amongst the knights who this applied to. This act not only condemned the named individual, but also declared that they were corrupt of blood. Subsequently, all their heirs and descendants would be disinherited. In 1460, Warwick and the rest of the Yorkist nobles returned to England, and Conyers would return with them. He was present at the Battle of Northampton under the command of the Earl of Warwick. Following the Yorkist victory, it seems that he stayed with the Earl of Warwick, as I can't find any evidence of him being present at the Battle of Wakefield in December 1460. The Earl of Salisbury was killed at Wakefield, along with the Duke of York. With his liege lord dead, Conyers transferred his allegiance to the Earl of Warwick, Salisbury's son. Following this, he would accompany the Yorkist lords all the way to Towton, where the Lancastrians were soundly crushed, cementing the ascension of Edward to the throne of England as Edward IV. Conyers would be involved in the operations in the north following the Yorkist victory against the remaining Lancastrian resistance. He was dispatched to ensure Penrith, Pontefract and Wrestle castles were secured for the House of York. Conyers would obtain the position of Sheriff of Yorkshire and was also Warwick's household steward at his castle at Midland. The next time Conyers appears in the record in a significant way is during the tumultuous period where Warwick fell out with the king in 1469. Conyers' wife Marjorie had died earlier in the year, in April, at the age of 50. Later in the year, Conyers has often been identified as the possible candidate for the mysterious figure that we know as Robin of Redesdale. This figure rose in 1469 to lead rebel forces against royalist forces under the command of William Herbert at the Battle of Edgcote. With Conyers' intimate knowledge of the northern parts, its people, lords and locales, this along with other evidence could be used to support him as a candidate for Redesdale, but the truth is, we will probably never know who Redesdale really was. I have covered the Battle of Edgcote in a previous video, which I'll link below if you're interested in the particulars of that engagement. Conyers was almost certainly among the army that fought against the royalists along with his son William. John Conyers is named as one of the rebel leaders by Hall. He is noted as a tutor and governor to two of the young captains of the rebel army, namely Sir Henry Fitzhugh and Sir Henry Neville. I have also done a video on Sir Henry Neville and his rather unfortunate fate at this battle, or rather just before it. Again, I'll link this below. It would be Conyers who would carry the word of the death of Henry Neville to the Earl of Warwick. Hall describes Conyers in the following way. Yet they had a tutor and governor called Sir John Conyers, a man of such courage and valiantness as few were in his days in the northern parts. The Battle of Edgcote was a victory for the rebel forces. William Conyers, the son of Sir John, was slain in the fighting. He also has been identified as a candidate for the mysterious Robin of Redesdale. The royalist commanders William Herbert and his brother Richard were taken to Northampton where Warwick was waiting. Conyers presented the captured lords to his master. Sir William Herbert pleaded with Warwick for the life of his brother Richard. However, it was at this moment that Conyers informed Warwick of the death of Sir Henry Neville, the Kingmaker's cousin. At hearing of this, Warwick had no issue with ordering the deaths of the royalist commanders. While this was the most likely course of action Warwick was going to take anyway, the death of a family member added an additional justification. The Herbert brothers were both summarily executed. Following the upheaval of 1469 and 1470, it appears that Conyers was reconciled with the king and submitted to his power in 1470 along with Warwick, well, on the face of it anyway. While Warwick would go on to betray Edward again, resulting in Edward's flight to the Low Countries and the readeption of Henry VI, I cannot find any reference to Conyers actively participating in events. I also cannot find any record that places Sir John at the Battle of Barnet alongside his master, the Earl of Warwick. I think that if he was still loyal to Warwick, that he would have been at this battle. This was Warwick's last gamble against his former protege Edward, and he needed his good retained men with him. Warwick would ultimately be killed at this battle. Sir John Conyers lived on. He was made a Justice of the Peace for Yorkshire's North Riding, another piece of evidence that he did not raise arms again against Edward because he was, quite frankly, promoted and rewarded. Following the death of the Kingmaker, Richard Duke of Gloucester gained many of the Kingmaker's lands, and it appears he gained Conyers as a retainer for the sum of £20 per annum. Conyers was made a Knight of the Body, who was a personal attendant and courtier to the King of England, and he was given another £200 annuity. He would receive ample estates in Yorkshire, where he would be very active on local commissions. To top these honours off, he was also made a Knight of the Garter. Following the death of Edward IV, Conyers appears to have stayed loyal to his successor and his good lord, Richard Duke of Gloucester, now Richard III. He fought on Richard's side at the Battle of Bosworth, where Richard was killed. He survived the battle and was actually later granted offices in Richmondshire by the new king, Henry VII, as a result of good and faithful service. He would go on to support Henry during the first rebellions of his reign in the spring of 1486, a position that has been called particularly significant, and according to Michael Hicks, it was a momentous decision. Sir John Conyers, Sheriff of Yorkshire, went on to eventually die in either 1489 or 1490, and by all records it appears to have been of natural or at least non-violent means, one of the few of this period of history who died not as a result of a bladed object. Sir John Conyers was an active participant and witness to the majority of the Wars of the Roses. He lived through the reign of 5 kings and would witness some of the major events of the period that would go on to shape England as a country today. He is described as a good and loyal servant and a valiant knight. By the time of his last large battle, he would have been in his late 60s or early 70s, a truly impressive man of his time. The Freezy Water catalogue describes the livery of his followers as a lion passant or a gules cross with crosslets on argent. The battles I can find evidence for that he participated in are the Battle of Blore Heath in 1459, Ludford Bridge in 1459, Northampton in 1460, Towton in 1461, Edgcote in 1469, and Bosworth in 1485. This doesn't mean he was not present at other intervening battles, however I can't find a record of him there in the research that I've done. However, if anyone has any reference for him at another battle, then please, let me know, that'd be great. He undoubtedly took part in many smaller actions, including skirmishes and minor sieges. Sir John Conyers is buried at Hornby in Yorkshire. Right, so that was the history of Sir John Conyers. So this guy saw quite a lot of the Wars of the Roses, more than most. And to be honest, when I started researching him, I just kind of thought of him as a little bit more of just another lackey of Warwick. But to be honest, he was very much his own man, fiercely loyal, but also had a great reputation. I had a spare steel fist miniature lying around from when I did the Capini command base. So I figured that would be a great figure for Conyers, and these steel fist miniatures do scale in quite nicely with the Perry miniatures, and this one had some nice armor, not too flashy, but flashy enough to be a retainer for the Earl of Warwick. So I had a go at his livery, which you can see here on the screen, and it was okay. It's not the easiest one I've ever done, but the weird sleeve, that's meant to be a sleeve in yellow, that goes on it. That was actually probably the hardest, because even though it's just a squiggle, you're trying to make a squiggle look regular, and then you're trying to replicate it 4 or 5 times across the armor. That was great fun. I'm really happy that was not the livery badge. As you heard in the video, his livery badge was, in the Freezy Water catalogue, is described as either a passant lion or a cross with crosslets. Well, I've already done some lions, and I thought, well, a cross with crosslets actually sounds quite cool. I have done crosses, obviously, on my Calais veterans, but I thought I could maybe play around with it a little bit, and that's what I've done. And you can see it there on the standard bearer. So it's this sort of Maltese cross looking thing on there, and it's described to be on a white field, which you can see I've done here. I decided to try and make the white much more of a dirty white, not cream, but a dirty white. And I think it just makes these figures stand out a little bit more, to be honest. It's just quite nice, especially because his livery colours, his coat of arms is blue, as you can see on the flag there. So I think a lot of people, including me, justly thought, well, it must be blue on for them, but apparently not. So here we have the middle base, which you'll know if you watch my videos, this will be the bill and bow unit. So I pop all the bill on the middle base, and I've used Perry miniatures, a complete mixture of the mercenary set, the foot knight set, and the Wars of the Roses infantry set. And again, I've just tried to create interesting poses. With the archers, I just tried to do what I normally do, which is just get as many on the base, but in an interesting fashion. I realised as well that I haven't done any sort of coloured helms for quite a while, so you've got this one here, you've also got the guy down here with the standard, who I did just the rim of the sallet. And I just tried to create an interesting looking scene. I really am pleased with how the white has come out. this is my first attempt at a hand-made banner at home. So this was done with Copic markers. There is actually, you can't really see it on the video, but there is actually a light grey on there to represent folds and stuff in the cloth. But that hasn't come out too well, so I may get a darker one. I don't know if that's something I'm going to be doing regularly, but I had the Copic markers and I thought, why not? I'll just give it a go. So there we are. That's quite a bit of fun. The other base, same kind of thing. I actually realised for this one I had quite a few people in livery jackets, and because the livery was quite fun to do, I think they're going to stand out on the battlefield. Basing has been done in the usual Wars of the Roses fashion, which involves putting down ground covers, then static grass for a static grass applicator, put in some tufts, some bushes, some other elements. These are all from Tajima 1, and then once that's dry I just put some glue onto the static grass and then sprinkle random flocks and other bits and bobs on it, just to represent weeds and stuff coming through the ground. I do try to leave some patches bare so that you've actually got some of the earth coming through, otherwise there's no point in putting that ground cover down to start with. You can see on the same one here, just bits of wood shavings as well. It's all good stuff. I recommend not throwing anything away when you get down to the end of it, but just combining it into one of these sort of boxes that you can use, and you can just grab, you know, and use and just sprinkle on there, because ground forms aren't natural. This guy will be acting as effectively he's a unit commander. This is just a bill and bow unit. It just so happens that John Conyers is in it. However, by doing this on a separate base, as you guys already know, I have the ability to now use him as a commander, and I dare say that he'll be making an appearance in our next Wars of the Roses games. Word has it, it might be a siege, and I think if Warwick was going to send anyone, it would be this chap to make sure it was done. As you saw in the history video, he was sent to secure castles after the initial Yorkist victory at Towton. So he's a man with form, and he's also a man who Warwick enjoyed sending places to get it done. I think this may be the last commander of Warwick that I'm going to do for a while, because I think, to be honest, I just need to get on and make the Kingmaker himself, as I already said in the sort of preamble before the video. I had a great time making this guy. The Steel Fist miniature is lovely. I just wish they had a bigger range, because I really, really like them. And you can't go wrong with the Periplastics, to be honest. I think that now is the time I'm going to have to get on with the Kingmaker, but I'm going to need a very big base to do it. I've been slowly collecting things for his base, because there's no way the Kingmaker is going to be on his base on his own. He had men, and that's going to be represented. Anyway, guys, I really, really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I'll leave some photos up at the end. And if you've got any questions about the video or any aspects of it, to be honest, just ask them down below. Remember to give the video a like if you liked it, and subscribe if you're not. And if you want to see more videos like this, then let me know. Is there anyone who I haven't covered? I have had some requests about doing Lancastrians. And yes, I am going to do some Lancastrians, because I am going to be building some Lancastrians. I am interested in the whole period. It's just that as I've been building the Yorkists, I did it for the Yorkists, and as I was sort of doing the Warwick side of things, it was for Warwick, and when I come on to doing the Lancastrians, I'll be doing it for them as well. But as ever, I hope you guys are all staying safe and you're all keeping well, and I will see you guys again in the next one. Take care of yourselves. See you all again soon. Cheers.